She walks it loud like a thunderstorm, debunking myths with style and form. True crime, conspiracies her game. Melissa Jade, remember her name. She's loud, feisty, spilling tea, diving deep into mystery, breaking down your wildest claims. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. Microphone fierce like a roaring lion, unveiling secrets people been hiding. True crime queen of the digital scene, Melissa's got you hooked on her screen. She's loud, feisty, spilling tea, diving deep into mystery, breaking down your wildest claims. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. Murders to cover-ups, nothing misses. Melissa's here to share her guesses. She's got theories big and bold, no stone unturned, no case cold. She's loud, feisty, spilling tea, diving deep into mystery, breaking down your wildest claims. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. From murders to cover-ups, nothing misses. Melissa's here to share her guesses. She's got theories big and bold, no stone unturned, no case cold. She's loud, feisty, spilling tea, diving deep into mystery, breaking down your wildest claims. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame. 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 She's loud, feisty, spilling tea, diving deep into mystery, breaking down your wildest claims. Melissa Jade, she's got no shame.
Hello, everybody. Hello, my fellow Melissa. We have Beaver with a Chainsaw, Neat Noodle, Justin, Michelle Sellers, Mom of Tuxedos, Hippie Chick, ooh, my screen, Petunia, ATS, Miriam, Corso, Gidget, Ross, hello, Lisa, DIY, Miriam, Fragile Like a Bomb, Carrie, Nicole, Homer, Lisa Corinne, name changed, Vicky. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Hi, Chazzy. Okay, sounds good, DIY. Hi, Moonchild. Hi, Harley. Hi, Just Buddy. Is it Taco Tuesday yet? Hello, Sin. Hello, Canes. Nana. My TMJ has really started acting up in the last, 30 minutes, and it's bothering me. Hi, Lady F&T. Hi, Claudia. We are, oh my God, I'm so tired. We are going to do the second half, hopefully, the second half of this transcript reading tonight, and I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to it all day. Hi, J13. I got my notes out. I took my Excedrin. Hi, Cerebellum. Hi, Alicia. Yes, I'm having a nice home. It's been very long. I just got home 20 minutes ago. 25 minutes ago, I was over on Dietz's panel for a little bit, got to vent a little bit, and then absolutely exhausted. I'm so tired. Yeah, he is. Hello, name change. I love Seinfeld. Hi, Marie Joey. I was number 40. Yeah, please definitely hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. We have an active Amber Alert. Andy. The cheese curds were salty. I had 4 of them. But the pretzels with the cheese were really good. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Growing Up Oreo. Hello, Shabane.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
How are you doing, dear?
I'm good. Yourself?
I was just saying my TMJ has been acting up like the last 30, 45 minutes, so I'm hoping that chills out and stops. MK. I hope that chills out and goes away. But other than that, exhausted but so excited at the same time because I've been looking forward to this other half.
Oh my gosh, me too. I'm excited.
Hi, Bree. Hi, Shiggles. We have an active Amber Alert. Hi, our Bubbles. And this active Amber Alert, this is Azalea Striffler. She has been missing since February 26, 2025 from Raleigh, North Carolina. She is 15 years old, female, white, blonde hair, blue eyes, 5 foot 4 inches, 110 pounds. Let me see. It doesn't give anything else. So if you or anyone you know has information, look how beautiful she is. On Azalea's whereabouts, please contact the Harnett County Sheriff's Office at 910-893-9111. Hopefully she's found soon.
Oh,
Yeah.
just so many.
I know. The cheese curds were salty. Like I said, hi, Sky. Gorgeous, Kate Smith. The cheese curds were salty. But the pretzels were decent. At least they were last night when I was starving, you know.
Why are the curds salty?
I don't know. The only thing I really like salt on a lot is my steak. Other than that, I don't like even potato chips tend to be too salty for me.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I also had someone leave me a comment that it upsets me when I get these types of comments that they basically said, it's a shame you have to stop and thank people so much. I really enjoy, I really loved your channel too, but it's so distracting. Now, yeah. And I get more of those comments than you realize. Now listen, I'm aware that sometimes it can be if people tend to super chat or gift memberships in a short period of time, that it can be stopping to do a little thank you video and stuff. But of course I'm going to stop and thank someone if they decide to send memberships or a super chat. That's very kind. It's very generous. I couldn't imagine not stopping and thanking someone. And so even though as a viewer, I could understand if you're just trying to watch, it could be a little interrupting, but at the same time, it's just one of the things that come with the territory of live streaming versus pre-records. And I won't not thank people that. Could you imagine if I didn't thank people? Oh yeah, no problem. You know what I mean? So I'm you're saying that you love my channel. You love my channel. But because I thank people, what? And then I had a person, Shay, who said, I need to thank everyone before my live starts.
What?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have the proof. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? They're like, you need to get all of your thank yous out of the way at the beginning. How am I supposed to predict who's going to how am I supposed to thank people now for something I don't know if it's going to happen? You guys are setting me up for failure with that one.
Yeah, that's assuming, it's
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and thank you, Woofy, for the memberships you're gonna give me in 30 minutes.
Yep. Thank you, MK, for the 5 memberships. Thank you, Just Buddy, for the $10. How the F am I supposed to know that? I know, it just because sometimes I'm like, should I wait to the end? But I can't. It's really nice when people do that. So I couldn't imagine just not stopping and thanking people. So I apologize if for anybody that may be a distraction for, but I'm not gonna change that. Maybe I could shorten down the videos, make it short. That's the only thing I think to do, but I'll always stop and thank anybody. I know, Michelle, but it's kind of like when you get the 99 supporting comments and then the one comment that's negative, you automatically always focus on the negative comment, but it's those ones that are like, hey, you're mad. You're mad because I'm doing the right thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. Those ones bother me. Hi,
Or
Jessica.
mine's always the ads. It's that's the one thing that you really have the least control of.
Yeah.
in that aspect. And I'm like, yeah, you really can't,
There
Google and YouTube are going to do what they're going to do.
So even bigger creators, because I know, listen, ads are not set for everyone the same way. Like what
Mhm.
like MK's experience will be for ads if he doesn't have premium is not the same as Jessica will be for ads. It's actually very weird how it happens. Like one person could get multiple ads in a short period of time, another person could get just one ad in that same amount of time. It's unique and individual to the viewer, but bigger creators have been talking out about this because it doesn't matter. I don't know what they did, but if it doesn't matter basically what setting you put it on as the creator, YouTube is just overloading with ads and they do their own thing. And there was this bigger creator, and I'd have to send it to you because I don't remember what her name was, but she does specifically pre-records and she drops the ads at specific intervals, and it's adding a bunch of ads that she does not put there, and she doesn't know what to do about it. And a lot of people were saying that they're going to unsubscribe in something that's for out of her control.
Aw.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, that does suck.
Well, they also, Jules, they do unique ads to you also, like, so whatever you're looking up or what, like, it's weird how it happens. Yeah,
I think that YouTube Premium is just worth it. Like that's
it
just me,
is.
but I know not everybody can afford it. But if it's something that like you enjoy and you don't really have like cable and things like that, do it. Do it.
Right.
Like there's so much online, like in YouTube now. Like you don't really even need like mainstream media
Yeah,
or
I don't have
cable.
cable or anything, and I couldn't afford premium for the longest time. So if you have people that you could go in for family with, I would
Hmm.
suggest doing that because it's only a $5 difference and you get 5 plans.
That's what we did. I don't think we would be able to, like in our home, be able to do it for everybody, but the family, it works and everyone enjoys it.
Hmm. And thank you. Hey, girl. Hi. One of my first lives, MJ said hi to me. It's so simple, but I had a horrible day. It made me smile and made a huge difference. Choose kindness, people. I'm so happy that you're
Mhm.
here with us. Thank you. Hey, girl. Hi. Okay. So, yeah, Melissa, exactly. Me too, Danny. Yeah. So, we have the other half of this transcript, and we got through the first two witnesses yesterday. And it was Detective Brett Payne and then Rylene Nolan. And we have 3 witnesses left. It's really intense. They just took a break. I feel like I'm streaming it or something. They just took a break and they're just returning now. And so defense is about to call their next witness, and their next witness is Matthew Gemmett. So are you guys ready?
I am.
I'm
Am I gonna
ready.
still read for the court and you got the
Yeah.
judges? Or no, or you
Yeah.
got the lawyers? Okay.
Yeah, we could just same thing we were doing. Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I agree. Neat. Hi, Mirabelle. Okay, so oh gosh, I'm so excited. So I don't know who this is yet, but okay.
I don't
So
either. I was actually gonna look him up, but I guess they're about to say, oh, he's with ISP. Okay, he's the
okay,
director. Ooh.
okay. So we have Judge the court.
Stephen Hippler, yep.
Mhm.
Here I am. Thank you. You can call your next witness.
Matthew Gamet. Do you
Do
solemnly
you
swear? Yeah, you don't
got
have to
it.
read
Do you
that.
solemnly swear? Blah blah. Okay.
So
So,
she's
Mr.
gonna be
Gammon,
Matthew Gamet.
I do.
Oh, thank you, Alicia. Melissa, you're doing great. You're doing great. No, thank you, necessary. No, thank you. Wait, hold on, it doubled up. I thought I was going crazy there for a second. Melissa, you're doing great. You're doing great. No, thank you are necessary. No, thank you are necessary. I'm not crazy. That's double for you too, right?
I think there's an issue sometimes with super chat. Like I notice when I try to like send you a phrase, it like pre-does it and like will type it out twice. It's weird. Maybe that happened to her. I don't know.
That is weird, but thank you either way, Alicia. And hi, Debly. Hi, Roxy. Hey, Harlot, Natasha, Tez. Hi, hi. Hi, Katrina.
Did you see
Okay.
MK's comment?
No, hold on. Let me see what MK say. What I just skipped the ads. I will not be bullied by corporate platforms into premium paid versions by ad ammunition. You go for it. You do that. Oh,
Oh,
you're fine, Alicia.
oh man. Okay, so I do Matthew Gammett. have been duly sworn testified as follows.
All right, so we have direct examination. I'm playing Ann Taylor, and Shay will be Matthew Gamet. So Ann starts with good morning.
Good morning.
Will you please state your name?
Yes, my name is Matthew Gamet. MatthewGamette.
And how are you employed?
I'm employed with the Idaho State Police Forensic Services, and I'm a laboratory system director.
What does that mean to be a laboratory system director?
I oversee operations of the laboratory system. I oversee anything from purchasing, procurement, contracts, human resources type issues, and hiring, terminations. I also oversee things like just how the laboratory operates day to day.
And how long have you held that role?
I've been with the Idaho State Police Forensic Services for just about 16 years, and I believe I've held this current role for about 10.
Do you have prior experience in similar line of work?
I do. Prior to working for Idaho State Police, I worked for Washington State Patrol as a DNA analyst and also a crime scene responder.
How are you educated?
I have a bachelor's degree from Brigham Young University. I also have a master's degree from Brigham Young University. And then I have continuing certificates from both West Virginia University and UC Davis.
Are you involved in the collaborative group NTVIC?
I am.
What is that group?
So that is the National Technology Implementation Collaborative. So currently my role there is to chair that group.
As it relates to forensic investigative genetic genealogy, what's the group's role with that field?
So currently what we're working on, we have several different subcommittees in our Forensic Investigative Genetic Genealogy group. What that group is focused on is anything from policies, procedures, contracts, things of that nature. Looking at the implementation of that technology into public forensic science laboratories.
Why is that important?
Why is the work of the group important?
Let me ask the question better. Why is it important to have policies and procedures? Oh God, and with these, she's focusing on those policies and procedures, man.
I am. I am. I mean, hey, that's what they're there for. I'm all
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
All right, ready? In
Yep.
any public forensic science laboratory, we want to make sure we implement technology well, that we implement it in a robust way, that it can be relied upon for things such as courts. And so we always want to make sure that when we're implementing a technology, that we take a look at how that technology is being used and we apply it well in the public laboratory space.
Is that important for public trust?
I believe so, yes.
Are there other organizations that you're involved in the course of your work?
Yes, I'm involved with several other forensic science organizations.
How about ASCLD?
Yes.
What is that one?
ASCLD, the American Society of Crime Lab Directors. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
They got like an organization for everything, man.
What is the purpose of that group?
So that's the group of laboratory directors. It could be laboratory managers, quality managers, laboratory leaders, in essence, are members of that organization.
And what's your role with that group?
Currently, I report to the board of directors as the CFSO, the consortium of forensic science organizations liaison for the organization for ASCLD. Load.
And I'm
It's
gonna
mouthful.
start with thank Tiki Hut Treasures for the $4.44. Thanks for making boring readings so interesting. Thank you so much for the support. Hey, Callie.
Fall thank yous.
Fall thank yous. Did you
Uh,
have a role in deciding that Authorum Lab should contract with Idaho State Police Forensic Labs?
I did have a role, yes.
What was your role?
My role would be as the laboratory system director, making a decision on contracts that would be awarded.
Did you decide that Authorum should receive the contract?
I did not.
Did you work on the contract with Authorum?
I need to answer that question in a little bit different way than you asked it, if you'll give me some leeway.
Sure.
I did not work specifically on the contract with Author. However, I worked on the specifications that led to a contract being awarded to Author.
The specifications you worked on, did those end up becoming part of the contract with Authorum?
Yes.
And what were those specifications?
So there were a lot of specifications within the scope of work that we developed to send out for a general bid process. As we bid as a state agency, as we bid for a contract, we send out specifications that anyone has to comply with as they give us their documents and responses back on those things. Then we have the ability to look at and make sure that they are compliant with those specifications that we have sent out.
Thank you, Jesse, for 10 months. Thanks, gratefully accepted. MK, take that. Thank you. What were the specifications for Authorum?
There were a lot of specifications sent out on the request for proposals. Intent to bid. There was a lot of different specifications that were sent out. Again, I have a recollection of some of them. I don't have a full memory of all of them.
Will you share with us what you do recall?
So things in that contract would specify that they use the interim policy. We also would put things in there about them following environmental protection type provisions the federal government requires us to abide by. It also would have other things like reporting requirements back to us, billing procedures, a lot of different conditions we put in that to specify how they are going to work with us.
So when you say interim policy, are you referring to the Department of Justice interim policy?
Yes.
Did you care if they were an accredited lab?
So at this time, as we were looking for a forensic investigative genetic genealogy vendor or company to provide these services for us, we were not aware of any companies at that time that were accredited.
And since that time, though, are you aware that companies do become accredited?
Absolutely. Currently, there are definitely companies that are accredited in these services. At the time that this contract was bid, there were none to my knowledge.
Did you look at the procedures and protocols of Authorum before you decided?
So I don't recall specifically myself reviewing those criteria. I know that there were manuals, protocols that were provided back to us as part of that bid. Generally, I would provide those to others within our laboratory that were more qualified than I was looking at the specific technology, and I am not qualified in FIG analysis.
Do you recall if their instruments were validated?
I do not recall.
Would that be important to have their instruments validated?
Validation is up to each laboratory and how they accomplish that. I can't speak to the working practices of author laboratories.
Does Idaho State Police Forensics Lab validate their equipment?
Yes, we do.
And is that important to do?
To us as an accredited laboratory, yes, that is an important part.
How about retention of data or the ability to go back and rebuild the work or look at the work that was done?
She's not doing this again, is she?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry. This reminds me of last night.
Yep.
All right. So we retain in our cases, we retain our electronic data, we retain any other notes and things that we make as part of our case records, part of our case file. We provide those to investigators and to the court as a normal business practice.
Did Authorum do that?
In this case, I believe they gave us a report or what was identified as a preliminary report. The contract specifies that they would keep any data or other things associated with that. For our purposes, we were most concerned that the data or anything else not be released to any other parties. And so our concern was more about data security, data privacy. And so in this case, I don't know if they have other data or other records that they have kept, they have retained. We had asked them as part of the termination in this case of our work that they would preserve those things or that they would communicate with both the prosecutor's office and with Moscow Police Department if any of that information was to be disposed or whatnot.
Okay. Keep it or tell somebody before you get rid of it. Am I understanding that?
Our specification was that it stopped our process with them, that we were no longer in a contractual obligation with them on this case. Essentially, we were transferring ownership of anything on this case between them and Police Department and the prosecutor's office.
The report that you ended up receiving from them, are you aware that that report doesn't provide details of how they did their work?
I have seen the report, yes. I have seen what was in the report.
And would you agree that what's in the report is far different than what the Idaho State Police Forensics Lab produces by way of notes and photographs in connection with its work?
We were not provided with analytical notes. We were not provided with data to my knowledge. We were provided with what was identified to me as a preliminary report, which contains some of their genealogical work on the case and other things, such as potential nationalities.
Is that different than what you produce when you produce a report at your lab?
It's hard for me to answer that question because it's a different report. It's a different type of analysis. And so I can't make a qualification there. I can tell you in our DNA reports, we released the report, we released the analyst notes. As a general practice, we have the electronic data and other things available for disclosure. But that's our general practice. I can't speak to the process as author in labs and what they disclose, nor can I speak to what is normal for a release in a FIG case.
Are you familiar with how you come up with an SNP, with that process where you get from a DNA sample to an SNP?
In general, yes, but I'm not qualified in FIG analysis.
Okay, I won't go too far with that. Are you familiar with how you get from a DNA sample to an STR sample for the lab's purposes?
Yes.
And are there similarities between the two processes from getting pieces of DNA to an end result profile that you can use?
Similarities in process as far as extraction and quantitation of DNA, but as far as instrumentation used, methods, and those kinds of things, very different processes.
So, some of the documents that Idaho State Police Forensics Lab produces that show us those results, those would be similar to what you would expect to see with an SNP.
I would assume, again, I'm not qualified in FIG analysis, so I can't speak to what documents they may or may not have.
Let's move from there. Thank you for that. And let's talk about Authorm being involved in the case that winds up being why we're here today. What communication did you have with Authorm on the early end of that process?
So, to my recollection, our early um, communication on this case was providing them with DNA that they would be able to develop, hopefully, an investigative lead for us on a case. After that sample, to my knowledge, had been that we had followed our process through and that we had put a sample into CODIS, that we had not received any hits off of CODIS, and then we would proceed with the next step of testing. We did have a contractual relationship with them since early in, I believe 2021. And so we did have a contract with them in place.
Was this the first case that Authorm worked pursuant to that contract?
No, I don't believe so.
How did they get the DNA?
The DNA sample itself, the DNA sample was delivered by Moscow Police Department in person to them at Author Labs.
Did you have any role in that part?
I did.
What did you do?
I accompanied the officer from Boise down to Houston and down to the Author laboratory. I didn't have any possession of the sample, but I was with the investigator that did.
After that sample was delivered, did you have communications with Authorm further?
Yes.
What were those?
So I had communications to my memory with them about what type of analysis we were asking them to do, also what type of searching. I remember they asked specifically for consent to do certain types of searching. We had to authorize things through memos and whatnot of them doing certain searching. Specifically, I believe it was the family tree DNA that they needed an authorization for. I remember having significant discussion with them about YSTR testing and if or how that would be accomplished.
Why did you want Othram to do YSTR testing?
So the reason for YSTR testing is to utilize different investigative databases that might be out there. I don't believe in this case we ever did YSTR testing. A lot of the discussion was around preservation of the sample or as much of the sample we could preserve. And so our recommendation to them was not to proceed with that type of testing at this time, to kind of see where we were able to go with the traditional S&P testing with the whole genome sequencing. And then we would maybe potentially revisit YSTR testing. I do remember some discussion with David Middleman of Othram about if they were able to bootstrap some of the whole genome sequencing in order to develop a Y profile that would be searchable from the data they already had developed instead of using additional sample to specifically develop a YSTR profile or any kind of a Y profile. Load.
What is, I know it's a lot.
Yeah.
What does
Hey,
that
everybody.
mean? Oh, sorry.
I was saying, hey, everybody.
Hello. What does that mean, bootstrapping? Take me back. They have this DNA sample, and then have they done those steps to get to their SNP before you want bootstrapping done? Or at what stage are you talking about?
Essentially, it was our understanding that they were in the process of or had already obtained a whole genome sequencing profile. And so our question to them was, is there a way to develop a YSTR profile from the genetic information that you already have through the other method of testing?
And that's what you mean by bootstrap? Add a different kind of analysis?
Correct.
Why would you want to do that?
Again, to see if there was a potential to search wide databases that might be available out there to identify genetic lineages.
What does that mean? Genetic lineages.
So a Y chromosome is passed down from father to son. And so we would be looking to see if we can identify a family line through tracking the Y chromosome DNA from father to son, to grandfather, all the way down to grandson, and potentially over multiple generations. So it would tie us into a family line that could be investigated further.
Did Othram bootstrap and get the YSTR for you?
To my knowledge, they never did anything with YSTR testing. And to my recollection, with my discussions with David, that wasn't possible with the data that he had at that point.
It was impossible?
That it was not possible, correct.
Thank you.
I do not believe that was attempted. Again, I'm not familiar with the technology that he would have had to have used to do such a thing. So I'm not aware if that was possible, if the technology didn't exist. I just don't know.
Okay. At some point, did Othram talk to you about the work they were doing?
Yes. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. I've been reading for
You're
you.
And did they have a recommendation?
They did. They had at least one recommendation that I remember.
When was that conversation?
I don't remember exactly when that conversation happened.
Well, let's put it between, when did they get the DNA to start with?
So they got the DNA November 22nd, I believe.
And what were they notified to stop work?
I believe the notification, the official notification, was on December 10th, if I remember correctly.
So when they came back to you with some recommendations, where was that in relation to the stopping of the work?
Probably early in December, I'm guessing. The actual work, the laboratory, what I would call the wet work in the laboratory, would be the first couple of weeks, probably before they would have turned it over to a genealogist to be searching in the databases and those sort of things.
To make sure I'm with you, wet work means DNA sample to where we get to the whole genome sequencing and then where we get to an SNP. I know I'm skipping steps, but that's the wet work?
Correct. The laboratory work, so anything that would be done in the physical laboratory, handling the sample, putting it into tubes, adding liquids, things of that nature, that would be done in the laboratory. Sequencing on an instrument, that would all be done in the first week, several weeks.
So after that, they have a recommendation for you.
Correct.
And what's their recommendation to you?
The recommendation to my memory, to my recall, was that they had several individuals that had the potential to be of interest in this investigation. They asked us if to further their family tree building, if we could be in contact with individuals and see if they were willing to contribute information into the databases that they were using in order to further the family tree building and further the genealogical work.
And we're in a closed setting here, so I'm going to ask you to give me the last name.
Here you go. I don't recall the last name. I'm sorry.
Was it your understanding that these were 4 brothers?
Yes.
Okay. What did you do in relationship to these 4 brothers?
So we did some cursory work, just looking in publicly accessible information, literally Google searches and things of that nature. What our approach was, we didn't want to be approaching people, especially with an investigation of this nature. That really had nothing to do with anything. We just wanted to make sure that there was some reason why Author Laboratories was asking us to go and ask these individuals to put their DNA into the database that law enforcement can search. So we just did some work to build just very cursory family trees to see what connection these individuals might have and to verify those individuals were indeed brothers, things of that nature. That's interesting that he's answering this.
Yeah.
Were you not thinking that? Because he's not the FIG person
Yep.
and they're being asked to look into this.
And no objection so far.
Yeah. And this is was it Nathan or Matt? Sorry.
This is Matt.
Matt Gambit. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Interesting. Okay.
It is.
And I was thinking too, just from my experience, Melissa, in dealing with the government contracting, I thought earlier I was going to say it, but I was just kind of flowing, was that like there was some point that they had to put some better practices and policies in place. I noticed how he said that, at the beginning, and those things evolve naturally. I completely understand that, especially like with the technology they have nowadays. But I think this is really fascinating to kind of see in our lifetime, like this happen and it be more part of the court system.
Absolutely.
I'm a little science geek, chat. If you didn't know, I went into the school for forensic chemistry. So I'm geeking out.
We appreciate the geeks here. Hey,
Okay.
Charlotte. So, did you verify they were 4 brothers?
I don't know that we would use the word verify, but we believe that the information was reliable that they had given us based on the publicly accessible information.
Now, I know you said you can't remember the last name of those brothers. We're here today, and Bryan Kohberger's name has been on the news for 2 years. You know his name. That wasn't the last name.
Oh, that was not the last name.
After you did the cursory work and the family tree, what was the next thing you did in relation to these 4 brothers?
We, at some point, and I don't remember exactly when, we had asked our investigator, Detective Vicky Gooch with the Idaho State Police, to reach out to one of the brothers we believe had put information into a genealogical database, ask him if he would be willing to upload that into one of these databases so they could further build out and use that information. She was, I believe, initially able to contact the individual. He was skeptical about her contact. And so there was another contact, a 3-way call made between myself, Vicky, and this individual for purposes of trying to validate this was indeed a law enforcement investigation. This was indeed a legitimate request. And at that point, that individual requested not to be contacted again, was not interested in participating. Interesting.
During the time leading up to that phone call, when you were building your family tree, I know none of the four brothers had the last name Kohberger. That name didn't come up when you were building the family tree either, did it?
No.
After that brother said, "Don't contact me again," what was the next thing you did?
So I don't remember again exactly when the time frame was with that, but I know that there were active discussions about having a phone call with the agency and the prosecutor's office about the work that was being done. They were requesting updates from us of what is the Author Laboratory doing? Where are you at in the investigation? Those types of things. We were giving them updates via telephone, via telephonic conferences with them, just giving them updates on we've delivered this sample, we've done this, those sort of updates. And then they requested a meeting with us to talk about the testing.
These conferences, who participated in those?
Okay, I'm gonna read in just a second, Melissa. I realized this last night whenever I explained what Teams was and having the ability, it's like their version of Zoom, like conferences. There's, also options in there, Melissa, where like you can record like those meetings, whether they're just
Oh,
called or video. And um, I'm wondering, like, did they like have that like turned off if that's something they were required? I don't know what that would be like in the government aspect specifically,
right.
but that
That's
is something that we did have available. Now, I think it is more widely used like in the last like couple years, but I remember like for meetings I would have at work, like we would record quite a bit of them, especially if there were certain, client stuff that we needed to track.
that is really interesting. I'm curious if she'll ask about that.
Yeah, because everything's been kind of telephonic, and it seems like, from my perspective right now, and naturally so, even like no matter if you're a prosecutor or defense attorney, I would think like you want notes, right? Like meeting notes, like what happened. And I just think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So these conferences who participate most of the time, to my memory, it was usually Idaho State Police detectives. The prosecutor's office might have also been privy to some of those discussions. Again, just general updates about where we were in the process.
Tell me about this meeting. It sounds like there's a big meeting that happens.
There was a meeting, to my knowledge, and I don't remember exactly when, but probably the morning of December 10th. When we had a meeting, telephonic meeting is my memory, with representatives from Moscow Police Department. I believe FBI had representatives on the phone call, ISP, I believe myself, ISP legal counsel, and I believe that the colonel of state police was on that phone call. And can I answer real quick to Sin?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sin, I was thinking just from my perspective, it used to be that whoever the meeting creator was had the ability to turn on the recording aspect, or for some people it could be auto set up in their settings whenever like they create accounts. But you're right, like each IT organization, what they want to do is separate.
Hey, Meatfoot.
Neat. Hey, all right. What
Ooh.
what happened on the phone call?
What happened on that phone call?
In that phone call, we were asked to turn over any kind of investigative records that we had, any kind of information that we had to the FBI team. They provided me with an email address to be able to provide what they were requesting from us, which was, to my memory, it was the login information essentially. And it might have been other things I'm not aware of, like packets and things. I'm not aware of the technical terms, but basically they were asking us to provide that information to the FBI investigator.
Did you do that?
Yes.
Do you know what you provided to the FBI investigator?
So what we asked for to be provided were the two database searches or information so that those could be independently searched. And we also asked them to cooperate and provide any information that they needed to be able to further investigate.
When you say two databases, do you mean the two genetic genealogy databases that allow law enforcement to search?
Yes. To my knowledge, these samples were searched in two genealogical databases that allow searching by law enforcement. So GEDmatch, and family tree DNA. I believe we're the two that were searched, and we were asked to provide those credentials, that information to the FBI.
Do you know that GED Match has two different databases, GED Match and GED Match Pro?
Yes,
Is it because one of those allows law enforcement and the other doesn't?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Idaho State Police Forensics Lab direction to Othram was to look only in the databases that allow law enforcement search. Is that correct?
Our direction to them was to follow the interim policy per contract with them, and any other communications as we would have had with them would be to follow the interim policy.
Does that mean yes? You expected them to only search the allowed databases?
I believe that it is what would have been communicated. That's our understanding of what that interim policy means, is they would research those databases that are allowable to be searched by us as a law enforcement entity.
After Othram turns over whatever they turn over to the FBI and you get the report and they get paid, is that the end of it with Othram for this case?
So they provide to us a report after we had asked them to turn over all of the information to the investigating agency and to the FBI. They provided us with what was identified as a preliminary report. I believe they titled it that because it was not a final report. The testing, we had asked them to terminate that testing, but they were not at a final result of a name to provide us, an investigative lead to provide us.
Why was the decision made for the FBI to take this over and not let Othram finish?
I don't know. I can't speak to that.
In that meeting, there was nothing stated about why we were going to do this?
I don't recall specific reasons, but they had asked us to transfer everything to the FBI.
Okay. Did you take a look at the two profiles, the FBI's SNP profile and Othram's SNP profile? Have you ever looked at those?
Did we look at those or did I look at those?
Did you?
I did not know.
Have you seen them?
No.
Would it surprise you to know that the FBI profile was over twice as big as Othram's?
Again, I have no knowledge of what the FBI did or didn't do. I had no knowledge or, yeah.
How involved were you with the FBI's process of their genetic genealogy?
I was not involved, other than to provide the samples to where they asked us to send those samples to. And then from that point, I was not involved in the process.
Have you become aware that they search databases that are not allowed to be searched by law enforcement?
Pure speculation is all I know, but I have no firsthand knowledge of anything.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for that. Your Honor, if I could just have a moment. I have a couple of questions for you about some documentation.
Sure.
The document that gave recommendations for you to call some of the four brothers, where is that?
So I believe that was provided to us telephonically. I don't think there was an email. I think it was names provided telephonically. And then those names were actually provided as part of the report that came several days after the conclusion of testing.
Okay, so you recognize those names from that report.
Yes, those have been provided to us before.
The work that you were doing before, trying to call one of the brothers, where did you keep your documents for that?
As far as the records I'm sorry, I'm confused on that question.
Let me ask it better. You did some work, research work, before you and Detective Gooch made the phone call to one of the brothers and kind of built out a family tree and did some other research. Where did you keep that?
Those were paper copies, and those were just retained and then sent to Othram as part of us communicating back to them. Basically saying, this is the work we did. We're providing these back to you in case they're helpful as you continue to build out the family trees.
Do you still have a copy of those?
Yes.
Did you document your attempt to get a voluntary sample from one of the brothers?
I do not believe so.
Do you know if Detective Gooch wrote a police report about that?
I do not know.
Did she provide any of her notes to you, her investigative notes?
Not to me. I don't know if she keeps notes, if she kept notes.
Okay. Did you watch her write anything down?
I did not. We were telephonic, I believe, at that point.
It would be hard to see then. Have you seen any documentation from that December 10th meeting?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Any documentation that's come your way from the FBI's work?
Not to my knowledge.
Have you turned over your work with the genetic genealogy, the help you were given Othram? Have you turned that over to the prosecutor?
I have not turned over physical copies of anything. I believe that our agency complied with the discovery request. I don't know exactly what was provided as part of that discovery request. Certainly, it is in an email document from me to Othram Laboratories, and as such, I would assume that that would have gone as part of the discovery request.
Are you talking about the discovery request that the defense made?
I'm not exactly sure. We were just asked to comply. We know that at any point our emails are discoverable, and I believe the way that ISP handles discovery request, large discovery requests especially, is to do a quote, email pull, or anything that might be related to the case.
I think that's the area that I'm concerned about. And I do have a lot of emails, so thank you for that. The procedures and protocols from Othram that you know about that you've read, where are they?
So those protocols would have been back in 2021. I believe from when we initially did the RFP. I believe it's the RFP process. I'm not completely familiar. It might be an intent to bid. I'm not sure what to call the process. Regardless, when that process was going through, they would provide those documents to us at that point, and I believe those documents likely exist.
Okay. Any of the work that Othram did in getting from DNA sample all the way down to SNP profile, where are they?
Where's the documentation of that? I do not have the documentation. That was not provided to us, to my knowledge. And I don't know everything that was provided back to the laboratory potentially, but to my knowledge, we were not provided with that information.
Would Othram have it?
Potentially, I don't know.
The work that they did to come up with a name to give to you for further investigation, where are those documents?
I don't know.
And your documents, some went to Othram, but you still have a copy of those?
I do.
I think that's it. Thank you very much. That's all for me for now.
Mr.
So,
Nye.
Mr. Nye says, no questions, Your Honor.
Me is Judge Steve Hubler now. Thank you. You can step down.
So the clerk swears him in. So now we have Mr. Helwig. Miss Taylor says, good morning.
Daniel Howard. Okay. Good morning.
Will you please state your full name?
My name is Daniel Helwig. First name Daniel, Daniel, last name Hellwig.
What do you do for a living?
I'm currently the forensic director at Intermountain Forensics. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and our main mission is to pushing forward new and cutting edge DNA technologies, assisting different agencies, law enforcement, and otherwise with education, training, and consultation on those. Our main focus right now is to help fund these cases specifically, and most of our mission is revolved around forensic investigative genetic genealogy, or FIG.
When you say you help fund these cases as a nonprofit, what do you mean?
A variety of different. We actually allow people to submit cases that they may be having problems getting the revenue and resources to move it forward. And then we evaluate it. So this could be, we've worked and tried to assist in mainly, I think most of our work is in smaller agencies that don't have nearly as much resources to further their casework with this technology. But what we've done work with law enforcement, medical examiners' offices, and defense, especially the Innocence Project.
Hmm. What did you do before you worked at this nonprofit?
I really hope Ari wasn't part of the
I
illegal
know, right?
Oh, yeah. I've been in forensic DNA for 20 plus years. I have a bachelor's in biology and chemistry from Viterbo University and a master's in forensic science from Marshall University. And I apologize, I have not seen that university name.
No, you're fine.
I started my career at the Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory as an intern there. I moved on to various public laboratories. I worked in forensic DNA at New Mexico Department of Public Safety and the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. I then started in the private sector. I worked for Sorensen Forensics in Salt Lake City, Utah, in a variety of different jobs there. Initially, I was the DNA technical leader, essentially the quality manager of the DNA section, but moved into executive management as the laboratory director. In 2019, I began with Intermountain Forensics as a founder. I'll refer to that sometimes as IMF. We were, up until July of last year, our mission was not only funding cases, education outreach, but also we established and operated a fully functioning forensic DNA lab. Our mission in that realm was to, again, continuing with cutting edge DNA technology, and specifically, we sought out to operate and utilize a forensic investigative genetic genealogy support laboratory.
What does that mean?
So our goal in this, we had a fully functioning laboratory in that we did what I'll call traditional forensics, STRs, as mentioned previously, but we also wanted to implement this new technology, forensic investigative genetic genealogy, and laboratory processes behind it. Specifically in this case, you're talking about forensic SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms.
So the court reporter just says, I'm sorry.
Single nucleotide polymorphisms.
She asks him to slow down and pronunciate better. Let me see if I can understand your work right before the 501c3, getting into the forensic investigative genetic genealogy world. Do I understand that your work was to do the part, all the long steps until you get to the SNP, and then it would be handed off for a genealogist to do the other part of the work?
Beyond just identifying SNPs, it is to generate an upload file, an end product that would be handed off to an investigative genetic genealogist to continue that research. So essentially, our laboratory had the ability to start from sample, from evidentiary item, do DNA extraction, which is essentially popping cells open, pulling DNA out, and washing all the residual material away. And then traditional forensics, when you're doing short tandem repeats, repetitive DNA that repeats over and over, you simply count them to our specific targets, which was SNPs, where we did DNA sequencing, looking at all the different letters within that genome and pulling out the relevant single nucleotide polymorphisms that were specifically associated through genealogy, generating through a pretty extensive process, what I'll call an upload file. These are files that contain all of these SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms that contain the information that is needed for the upload into these databases.
Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit with you. So in the traditional STR, we've heard some about that today. You said splitting the DNA open and washing it?
Yes, that's essentially the very simplified version of DNA extraction. You can think of this biological material, these cells, as little tiny water-filled balloons with nuclear material with DNA inside of it. I'm actually using my hands right now. If I were on camera, you'd be laughing at me. I'm theatrical. Uh, DNA extraction, similar to previous testimony, is just popping those cells open, pulling the DNA out, and washing all this cellular garbage, if you will, out to generate an extract. If it can then go down several different pathways depending on what you need. Traditional forensic testing, STR, short tandem repeats, is taking that DNA and looking at repetitive sequences and counting how many repeats are there. The best way I can explain this is if you had the word cat, and that was the specific DNA letters that you were looking for. You could repeat that word cat 8 times. That would be a short tandem repeat. Cat repeated 8 times. I would call that an 8. You have DNA from mom and dad, so you have 2 copies of this. So you have an 8 and maybe another 8 from your mom and dad. The problem there is that you're not actually looking at the specific letters. So a 3-letter word like dog would be completely different. We've got an 8 repeat STR and an 8 repeat STR that have different sequences, but will have the same short tandem repeat number. SNP, single nucleotide polymorphisms, is actually looking at the DNA sequence. So if we were to look at a SNP, let's say we're particularly interested in the A in cat, we would sequence that DNA and then go into that sequence and say, at this location, we have an A. And we have an A from mom and maybe an A from dad. That is the generation of an S&P profile. Same concept, but we're dialing down to the specific letter in question.
Have you done both kinds of work?
Yes. In my before IMF, I worked at several different laboratories, all using traditional forensics, STRs, and YSTRs. And my work at Intermountain Forensics, we did that, but we also focused on forensic S&P testing.
If I understood that part about the water balloon right, it's one water balloon, same process of popping it open, stripping out the stuff you don't need, and then it's where you go from there that makes the difference between an STR and an SNP ultimately.
Correct. It's all associating to the same DNA extract, and that's similar to what the Idaho State Police Lab does as well.
So the process of getting that DNA water balloon open so that you can strip things off, does it matter how you do that?
Well, there's a variety of different ways to do that, but in forensics, there's some specific and kind of common tools that we use that the process to get there can vary somewhat. However, it's fairly standard practice to use some of the same tools within the forensic DNA community.
I think I understood the repeats as looking for patterns, but the SNP is looking at the individual characteristic.
Uh, yeah, Harley, this is the second part of the transcript reading from yesterday. Or they were asking in chat.
No, you're fine.
Do you want to
I'm
put your
sorry.
little bander wrap again?
Yeah.
Maybe?
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm not focusing too much on chat. My TMJ is like getting worse, and so I'm sorry if I'm not like chatting too much or like it's when it happens, like it hits like hard out of nowhere. And so I apologize. I'm doing my best.
No, let me know if I can help in any way. I don't mind.
No, you're
I'm
fine.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
So we're on individual letter. Did you already read that part?
Mm-hmm. No, that's your answer.
Oh, sorry. All right. I'm Daniel. Individual letter nucleotide. So if DNA is made up of billions and billions of letters, STR is looking at repetitive sequences and counting the repeats. And SNPs is looking at specific letters, specific nucleotides on that genome.
All right. I want to talk about that whole process, how you get from an SNP to splitting the water balloon open. I'm with you there. So what do we do after we get that stripped off?
If we're going down the path of forensic S&Ps, there's a few different ways you can do that. There's one way that is essentially a targeted practice. We're looking at S&Ps in question, and we're going to focus on those S&Ps and do what is called an amplification PCR. Basically, a DNA photocopier of that sequence. That specific letter and a little bit around it to specifically target a S&P in question. The other technique is something more attuned to whole genome sequencing. Again, there's a variety of different ways you can do this, but the idea here is we're going to sequence the entire genome, the entire length of DNA on this particular extract, and then we are going to pull out the SNPs that we need, the relevant ones that we're looking for. This can be done. I will refer to that as whole genome sequencing, acknowledging the fact that there's a variety of different ways you can accomplish that. Once you sequence the DNA, it comes out of the instrument in question, and there's several different instruments you can use. But for most of the part, it turns into raw data. And that raw data is typically found in a file called a FASTQ file. This raw data is massive. It has an insane amount of information, and it's not refined in a way that we can actually utilize it. So the steps from taking that raw data to actually getting the upload file, that end product for upload into these databases, is bioinformatics, essentially a software that goes into this massive amounts of data, pulls out the things that we're looking for.
Is all software the same, or all bioinformatics programs? Is that all the same?
No, each, as far as I can tell, each laboratory has their own version of bioinformatics that they can use to get from sequence data into usable results.
If I understand where we are, we popped open the balloon, we put the DNA in a sequencer, created a raw data file called an FASTQ file, and now we need to do bioinformatics to get an SNP.
Right.
Okay, what happens from there?
So in the bioinformatic pathway, you're doing multiple things. Again, you can think of this as a DNA sequence that the sequencer has given you a truckload of information. They're essentially puzzle pieces. The first thing we're going to do is reemerging. 1 second, let me get a drink about to cough.
No, you're fine. You have a lot of talking, and half of me feels really bad. The other half is like, thank God, because talking triggers the jaw worse, you know? So, like, I'm thankful at the same time you have a lot of talking.
Yeah, no, I
But
don't
it's a
mind.
lot of
And
big words, too.
it is, yeah. I think he's elaborating a lot, and I think that essentially she was wanting to kind of like break that up, because it is a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using different terms, like we've had bootstrapping, like we just like, and I get it, like there's like you're like probably your jargon in your laboratory, but maybe using like something more consistent could help. So
Right.
I don't perceive this type of information being discussed to this degree in front of a jury, because I think it would lose like all of us. But you know, we're in a different we're not at trial yet. So I think
Right.
it is information overload.
It's a lot of information.
It is.
It's
And
really
I
shit.
love, yeah, right, man. This is like bring me back to like, I was like doing some stuff with nursing school. Okay.
I'm sorry for anyone who struggles with the TMJ. It doesn't happen too often for me as far as like a TMJ attack. That's what I just call it. Luckily only like a few times a year, but when comes on, it comes on like out of nowhere and really, really strong. And it sucks. Anything that like is in your face or head, you can't really function that well because it's a pain in your face. You know what I mean? Um,
What does it feel like?
well, for me, it's from an injury, and so all of a sudden, like earlier, like when I was on Deeds, like I said in the chat, I was like, I could feel it, like it just like an ache, and then from there, like since I've gone live, my whole side of my head is like tight. My jaw starts to clench and chatter, like, but you can't control the chatter, and like I can't describe like the pain, like, but it gets stronger and stronger, and if it gets bad enough, like my whole eye will get like blurry from it, and then you just have to kind of wait. You have to wait. You could take like a nerve blocker. I don't like taking it because it makes me tired and like, yeah.
Wow.
But it doesn't usually get like that. That like it's only a few times a year, but when it gets bad, it gets bad.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about it. I've
Yeah,
never experienced it. You're the first person that I know of that I've met that has had it.
I've been like
It's-
pushing on the side of my head this pretty much since 5 minutes into the live, like. So
Oh,
I apologize, but like just because sometimes when you have bad pain, if you push on it, at least on the head, like it relieves it, if that makes sense.
yeah.
And so that's what
Well,
I've been doing. I haven't looked at chat, and I'm so sorry.
Well, do you want to like pause, or I don't want you to have to
No,
keep going?
I'll finish out this witness and I'm okay.
Okay. So we're going to take all the puzzle pieces that are the same and we're going to use them to paint the best picture of that information. You can think of this as we're sequencing this DNA, this human genome, multiple times, hopefully 10, 15, 30 times. Our samples in forensics are typically difficult, so we don't tend to get that much, that level of essentially. We're trying to sequence this entire genome multiple times to add more context in what we're getting. In merging, we're taking the DNA sequences that we have multiple copies of and we're combining them into one, the best fit for that particular fragment of DNA. Well, we still have puzzle pieces to put together. The next the next thing, this is reminding me of AP Bio right now. I swear we used to like do samples of these or whatever, like as like kind of equations. It's weird. It is like mind blowing. Anyways, well, we still have puzzle pieces to put together. The next thing is mapping. The bioinformatic pathway will map all of these puzzle pieces and put them into the human genome and the way that they're supposed to be. That takes multiple fragments and lines them up in the right manner. Once it's mapped, we're going to start to be able to find the particular SNPs that we're looking for. We have a human genome with a whole bunch of different letters in different positions. We can say, all right, these are the relevant SNPs that we're looking for, genealogy based informative markers. We want to pull these SNPs out and see what the call is there and send that up to an upload file. So is this making sense? Like they're
Mm-hmm.
basically saying part of the DNA that is able to detect or able to provide information of where your lineage is, that's what their goal is to achieve, is to extract that. I hope the chat follows. In some cases, we don't have all of the information. We're missing some sequence data. We maybe gotten 80% of the genome and some of the SNPs are missing. There's a process to fill in those gaps called imputation. Imputation is in most bioinformatic packages. Essentially, we know what the letters are in front of this particular spot we're missing, and we know what the letters are behind what this particular spot that is missing. So we can look at all the human genomes and impute, estimate the most likely letter in the position that we're looking for. Once we're through imputation and allele calls, or that's cells, sorry, allele cells, we're going to use this bioinformatic package to pull out SNPs that we're looking for and put them into a format that will be usable for upload into these databases. At IMF, we actually generated two files, one specifically to GEDmatch Pro or GEDmatch Pro database, and one specific to the family tree FTDNA database. In these files, GEDmatch Pro, we typically got around 550,000 plus SNPs that we're looking for, and the family tree DNA database upwards of 600 to 650,000 SNPs. So those are for chat. Just a reminder, those are the two that are law enforcement minus the pro is law enforcement.
And
They can
thank
look
you
those up.
2112.
Oh,
Shay spot on. Hashtag Shay spot on. Thank you.
sorry. Okay. So the end product there, though, is a text file or some sort of upload file, which could be in text format or Excel format. But essentially, what it is a file with all of these SNPs, the calls at the SNP location, and a format that allows them to be uploaded into the database. At this point, we hand it off to an investigative genetic genealogist to do the research. So
God.
that's why they're having, is that why I think he's trying to explain why maybe the different amounts that were pulled from Authorium to FBI? Is that where
Yeah.
he's going?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it was double the file and stuff.
Yeah.
So Anne says the upload databases. You mentioned two. GED Match Pro, and Family Tree DNA.
That's correct.
Why did you mention those?
Those are the two databases that allow law enforcement searches. They have specific terms of service that give a portion of that database. Those that have consented to do so to law enforcement to search in for human remains in some cases and in criminal cases.
So in this lab process, to get to the SNP, to get to the upload file, it sounds like there's a lot of steps along the way.
It's a pretty complicated process, yes.
Is it important to keep lab notes or bench notes or have procedures or protocols?
Yes. And I think that is pretty standard practice amongst forensic DNA testing laboratories in general. You're going to adhere to a quality management system. You're going to have procedures, protocols, and policies that tell you what to do, tell you how to do it, tell you what samples to use, what personnel can do the analysis and technical review, and so on and so forth. It's a whole quality structure that gives support and credence to reliable results. And that would include protocols, SOPs. It would include case documentation, laboratory notes about what you did, how you did it, chain of custody documents, electronic records as needed, and hopefully at the end of it, a report that includes conclusions and information about what was done.
And why do you want to do all of that? This guy is long-winded, man.
Mm. I don't know if you hear me, like I'm like starting to.
Yep.
I'm trying to keep up with his punctuation too. Shit. I'm like, do you got like a run on for days?
Yep.
No wonder she was like, can you slow down?
Yeah, the court reporter at this point.
I mean, this is like, Ann's thing of everything's flowing. I mean, he's just like flowing. Everything flows. He's flowing with this. Okay, what do y'all want to do that? First of all, within the forensic DNA community, it's a part of our accreditation process and some of the standards that we adhere to as a community. Second, it's just best practice. The holding of the records, using them, creating them, and retaining them. You never know if you're going to need to refer back to them in your own notes, or we mandate a technical review of all this data. So a second quality analyst will look over all of your laboratory notes, all the work you did, and your reports, and make sure that they agree with it and would come out to the same conclusions and for discovery request. At IMF, we have typical documentation that we would send to our clients that we would include a report and all of the case notes and laboratory documentation associated with that. Outside of that, we oftentimes get requests for more than the information. What is our validations? What is our quality manual? Competency test for our personnel, their training and education, a whole list of support documents that are within our quality management system that also are important to accreditation of our laboratory.
Before you become a 501c3, was your laboratory accredited?
Even previous to becoming a 501c3, since the inception of the company in 2019, even before we no longer did laboratory operations, we got accredited by ANAB ISO 17025. That was on our accreditation scope, included traditional forensics, STRs, YSTRs, and eventually we included within our scope forensic SNPs. Massively parallel sequencing that encompasses accreditation for this whole genome sequencing and support of forensic investigative genetic genealogy that we did.
Is there a set of guidelines or rules that apply to work with DNA? To split that DNA water balloon open?
Split that water balloon open.
Yeah.
Shit. Sorry. Oh man. And I do think this is fascinating just because even since this case I've seen some accredited laboratories lose their accreditation and be shut down for not following proper procedures. And
Yep,
so
absolutely.
they're on this shit. All right. Yes, and I think you've heard testimony to that. There's accreditation standards. ISO 17025 is the big one, as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigation Quality Assurance Standards. For forensic DNA testing laboratories, those are common. I would say more so almost required within the forensic DNA community. And those are standards that dictate our quality management system as a whole, what we do, how we do it, how we support it, how we document it, and how we report.
Is that important? So there's public trust in what you do?
More so, public trust for sure, but reliability and reproducibility of results, transparency, and just ensuring a full quality behind your conclusions and reports.
Mr. Helwig, you mentioned the size of the two SNP profiles for GED Match Pro and Family Tree DNA. 550,000 or 650,000 seems to be the maximums. If you had a case where you had produced a file to upload, an upload file, and it had, let's say, 600,000 in it, could you take that text file and turn it into twice that big? And welcome, Trena.
Okay. I'm not sure how we would do that. No. An important note here that was just IMF's policy. We generated upload files specific to each one of the databases, and that's the number we had within our bioinformatic package. That's not necessarily what would be true to others. That being said, if theoretically we were to deliver our upload file to our client and it say had 500,000 S&Ps on it, I don't know of a mechanism to add S&Ps in that manner without going back to our raw data.
This guy loves being a witness, just saying.
He does, is she?
In this particular case, I know you haven't gotten involved in all of the ins and outs, but did we provide to you what we received in regular discovery, the author file and the FBI file, upload files?
Yes, I did receive two upload files. One was a text file that came from Author Labs, and one was an Excel file that came from the FBI.
Is that also an upload file?
Yep. Both of them are upload files. They contain exactly that, a listing of S&Ps, the call, and their location in a format that would allow them to be uploaded to databases.
What was the difference in size?
The FBI upload file had significantly more S&Ps called than the author file. I wasn't able to go deep into it. I don't know exactly how many more, but there was more S&Ps called within the upload file for the FBI than there was with the author file.
And since the author file is smaller and it's a text file, can you tell how the FBI got so much more data, so many more SNPs?
No, that's kind of the important part here. There's no documentation to say how this happened. And that's really the important part, right? I have no reason to believe that author and laboratory did anything wrong to obtain their profile. I just don't have the documentation to show me how that came to be. Same with the FBI file. There's no documentation or notes or bench or report to say, this is what I had, this is what I did, and this is now what I have. So I'm unsure of how that came to be. So
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just wanted to correct myself from earlier. So I misunderstood that. I thought that maybe the file name could depend on like how many S&Ps, but apparently that's not the case. So I was wrong. Sorry.
Well, she did say it included way more SNPs than the FBI one.
Right, but I don't. The file name isn't. I don't think the file name itself is dictating that.
Right. Okay, so go ahead.
I think because he was just saying how he was like uploading things based on like the specifications of each, company they were working with.
Swatching assessment. Yeah. Thank you, Your Honor. If I may have just a moment to check with my team. Mr. Helwig, that's all I have. The prosecutor might have some for you.
Go ahead.
So I'm now Mr. Nye. Mr. Helwig, I want to start with your accreditation testimony. Did I hear you correctly that your lab was accredited since inception in 2019?
Our laboratory was accredited for traditional forensics. We began the accreditation in 2019, and I believe the first accreditation scope we received was in 2020. For forensic S&Ps, our accreditation was January 20th of 2023, I believe.
So you weren't accredited back in 2019 for forensic SNPs, correct?
Correct. We weren't actually doing forensic S&Ps at the time.
But you were working on forensic SNP cases prior to your accreditation, correct?
No, we specifically reserved working on these S&P cases until we received our accreditation.
Okay. Do you recall describing the accreditation process as a chicken and egg problem?
I don't.
You testified you work at or work for Intermountain Forensics.
That's correct.
Do you post on their website?
Sometimes, yeah,
Do you post in your name, Danny Helwig?
certainly.
You don't recall posting in June of 2020 about accreditation being a chicken and egg problem?
Damn.
Hmm.
Oh shit! Sorry, you just taught me. I don't recall. I'm certain that that statement is on there, and I would need to recollect. Certainly,
Oh, I'm happy to show this to you.
that would be great.
And Taylor, may I also see it? Sure, you can. Hands document to witness.
Yes, yeah, I recall that.
Okay, so do you now recall describing accreditation as a chicken and egg problem?
Absolutely, it was several years ago. I appreciate that refresh in memory.
In that same post, you talked about how you appreciated the trust of those that were using you before you were accredited, right?
Oh,
Hmm.
no. Oh my god. Correct, yes.
Do you feel like your work before accreditation was a lower quality than after accreditation?
No, absolutely not.
I also want to talk to you about, you mentioned that Intermountain Forensic does, or at least used to do, some cases like this, right?
Yes.
Assisting law enforcement.
Correct, yes.
Roughly how many cases did you assist law enforcement in?
That's a good question. We have a running total there, but I'm guessing in the hundreds.
Okay. And what was your role personally in assisting law enforcement in those cases?
I had several. I did consultations up front. I was qualified as an analyst for forensic S&Ps. I did some technical review, and in some cases, I distributed files to our clients.
And when you say in the hundreds, you mean you went through that whole process you talked about with Miss Taylor in hundreds of cases?
Yes,
Developing an SNP profile.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And in all of those cases, were you successful in developing an SNP profile?
No,
In roughly how many cases were you successful in developing an SNP program?
we were about, at the end of laboratory operations, we were about 80%, somewhere in that range.
So 80% of hundreds.
Yeah, I believe so.
In the cases you successfully developed an SNP profile, did you learn medical information about the individuals whose DNA you were looking at?
No.
There's that medical information. Did
Yeah.
anyone at Intermountain Forensics learn medical information about those people?
Nope.
When you develop, I believe you called it an upload file, is that correct?
Correct.
What does an upload file look like if you just open it on a computer?
It's a text file, a very, very big. Again, it comes in different formats, but essentially what it is a text file. It is a big text file that has hundreds of thousands, in our case, of S&Ps that have a position, a name, what chromosome they're found on, and the actual letters that we're looking for.
So if you provided that upload file to someone that didn't have any training or experience in genetics, would they be able to read it?
Not in so much words. There's some headers on there, I guess, that would be a narrative, but the molecular biology would be pretty complicated.
He's messing up now, you see.
Hmm.
So let me ask it this way, I guess. If you were to hand that upload file to your average police officer and ask them whether or not the person whose DNA you are looking at would have cancer, would that officer be able to do that?
No.
What additional steps would you need to take to learn medical information from an SNP program above and beyond what you are doing at Intermountain Forensics?
Well, SNPs are informative to a variety of different things. So what we're looking for is genealogy and informative markers or ancestry link informative markers to find health information or phenotypical like hair, eye color. You need to look at different SNPs. There's a horde of research on what medical information is out there and what SNPs are probative. To gain access to those SNPs, you would have to go back into the informatics pull the information from the raw data specific to the medical SNPs that you're looking for. That's not something we did at IMF.
So if I'm understanding correctly, at IMF, you developed SNP profiles, but they were specific for ancestry?
Genealogy and ancestry, yes.
Why didn't you develop SNPs related to medical information?
That's not part of our scope. We are a forensic DNA testing laboratory. We're generating FIG profiles for the support and upload into these genealogy databases. It wouldn't be relevant nor probative nor appropriate.
Did you, when you helped these law enforcement agencies, did you ever follow these cases to see if those were successful at the end?
Sometimes we delivered files to our partners. In some cases, we had an forensic investigative genetic genealogy team that worked the cases on the investigation side. But in some cases, our clients would come back to us and let us know that they've gotten a result or they have had a case resolution.
And you participate in the, I don't know exactly what you call it, in the FIG community. Would you consider yourself a member of the FIG community?
Absolutely. So it doesn't sound like he was involved in the process of Bryan's DNA.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
But we're up here. We jumped one.
Oh, we did. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Trust me.
I guess, yeah, there's that's a variety of different groups, I guess, and message boards and information pathways. And I try to be a part of that where I can. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. I'm just, this cancer, this medical, this is really intriguing me.
Mm-hmm.
As a member of the FIG community, did you hear about other people's success stories using FIG?
Absolutely.
Have you ever heard of a FIG case that was successfully solved using medical information?
No, never.
Just 1 second, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, thank you. Ann Taylor. Full genome sequencing is the whole genome, everything. Is that what that means?
Yes, the whole genome sequence is the attempt to sequence the entire genome if possible.
Now, I heard you talking to the prosecutor about what you didn't look at with medical information, but I thought I heard you talk about when you got down to the SNP, those SNPs weren't called from the whole genome. Did I hear that right?
I would have to rephrase that a little bit.
Of course you would. Please do.
And long-winded explaining.
Mm-hmm.
When we're dealing with whole genome sequencing, we're attempting to sequence the entire genome, and it turns into that raw file, that FASTQ file that I mentioned before. Now, the next step is the bioinformatic pathway. The bioinformatic pathway is going to be targeting specific SNPs in question that we want to solve the question for. We want to answer the question for. In our case, these are genetic genealogy or ancestry informative markers. Those SNPs that provide information for genealogy and ancestry. The bioinformatics that we would use at IMF would be specifically targeting those particular SNPs. But the raw data, the sequence data, still has the entire list of SNPs. We just aren't pulling that piece of information out.
So if you handed me a case with your notes, protocols, and procedures, I could look at what you did at a whole genome sequencing and know you were targeting only genealogy SNPs. Would that be fair to say?
With the right knowledge base, yes. The list of SNPs are included. Where they are and the name on the upload file are all there. You can do the research to look at it that and say, okay, these are genealogy or ancestry informative markers.
If I had a file with notes that talked about how bioinformatics was used, what to produce, what kind of SNPs to produce, and handed it to somebody like you, could you tell me these are the ones that go to ancestry issues, that go to genealogy issues, if I had the notes from somebody else?
I would have to do some research, to be honest with you. The SNPs in question that are that we're using are all derived from these genealogy databases. So it's the GEDmatch Pro or GED Match Pro, Family Tree DNA, Ancestry.com. Those are the ones who have decided which SNPs to use, and we just use them as a tool. So, what is the SNPs that best upload into the Family Tree DNA law enforcement database or GEDmatch Pro? And so when we're bioinformatically pulling out the S&Ps, we're doing so under the direction of what they want from us. Can I determine if there's medical information within those S&Ps or S&Ps with or medical information? Yes, but it would be a lot of research.
I just have a couple of questions for you about what the prosecutor talked about besides that. He asked you about the chicken and egg problem and different cases you'd done and the hundreds of cases that you've done before. You told us that it's important to have protocols and procedures and keep your information, keep your notes. Did you do that in those cases?
Oh, yes, yes. Within the quality management system as a whole, and adhering to our procedures and protocols and the accreditation standard that we derive to, it's all that. It's case documentation, laboratory report, and then the foundation behind it, validation summaries, competency testing for personnel, their educational requirements. All that has to be done in those cases and adhered to our own internal policies.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you. You can step down. Does defense have other witnesses?
Your Honor, for the IGG, I have one other witness this morning,
How
and
long is
she's a
that one?
little. I think she's a little bit longer. Let's take 30-ish minutes for lunch. So then they do the lunch recess. I think I'm going to stop there though because it's painful. It's
Oh,
painful and
yes.
I feel really really bad because I really wanted to get through this tonight, but I'd rather like enjoy it and really pay attention to than to do what I'm doing right now, and I feel really bad. I'm sorry guys. I know my energy isn't there, but I'm in a lot of pain. I'm really in a lot of pain right now.
Sorry.
No, and it hits out of fucking nowhere, like without any warning. And I'm doing my best, but like I'm tugging on my hair, and I know that sounds crazy, but like the weirdest things will bring relief when your whole jaw is clenching. And so like even pulling on my hair, that's what I'm doing. Like and talking
Oh,
irritates it more, because it's your jaw. Um, and so I don't want to possibly just have it get worse and worse, and I'd rather just wait. But she's
The next one, Leah Larkin, is will be a good
and
one to
she's
like
and
start.
that's also too, it's Leah Larkin, and I don't want to not be like, because right now like my eyes are glazing out and I'm not fully absorbing everything, and I hate that. But is the Murphy stuff in the
So
Franks?
it is. That's what I was gonna ask you. Maybe we can do a
we
third
could
and we finish
we could
that and
do
do the Franks.
yes. Okay. Jeez. See, even though like my eyes are draining in and out, and I feel like that would have happened with that specific witness either way, because he was very long-winded. What I have learned, like with myself at the court, is as a witness, you want to give your minimal answer and wait for them to ask for clarification. And he was just willingly giving a lot. But it was very obvious that she was calling as a defense witness for their favor. Um,
Yeah.
but I I could talk to you guys for a minute about what my thoughts are, because this medical is really interesting to me, and I have multiple times written down in my notes now where they keep bringing up this medical and using the cancer as an example. I don't necessarily think that they went with cancer versus, is she going to try to find a way to link some medical issue Kohberger has as aligning with that, like to use that as a comparison with the DNA? And if so, what rights do you have over that?
Yeah, that's gonna be really interesting. Maybe that's kind of where we'll lead in with like Leah Larkin and more her specialty. Um, would be my guess. But I think that you know what is I think the problem here where I'm getting at is I think Anne has a problem with the fact that the information that okay went from authoring to prosecution and law enforcement, and that information never went fully back to ISP. So it sounds like she's like, so for any layman that has these files or information, what can they do with that? Like,
Right.
I think she's trying to find a break in the chain here. And is there any kind of, way that this could, yeah, I do think it's an interesting approach, but I don't know. I mean, I think she's
Well, do
throwing.
we know? We don't know of Bryan to have any medical conditions as of now, nor would we. I wouldn't expect necessarily to know of anything, but there's a reason this is being brought up. And if she can't just fight the DNA itself, possibly using medical information to link it, I have to look more into that because I don't know. I don't even know if I could
The
even think of a case where I'm
the
familiar
vision.
with that.
Remember the thing where he wrote about his visual snow, but
Oh, that's a good
that's
point.
that's one thing that kind of made me think.
But
But the
mm,
four brothers and that.
what was that about?
So I'm wondering if it's a a very like a distant relative, because whatever is available in the two sites that they had, I don't think was getting them as close back to what their testing and their S&Ps was. And it was maybe like third, fourth cousin. That's what I'm guessing. Like something that's like a separate, like separates there.
So you think they're related to Kohberger, just don't share the last name?
Yeah, I think that they could be related. I think it could be maybe the maternal mother, like the maternal side of the family more
Right, right.
so. And it's like not getting, I don't know. That's just my thoughts. This is just speculation. I really want to look into it more, but I don't want to read ahead because
I
I'm like
know,
doing
I
this.
know.
But
But
I think that we'll get more clarification probably on the brothers as it goes through, because I remember that that something had been brought up about other people, but I didn't really know, what that was all relating to because it was closed.
oh, I don't know, Tess. I don't know. I don't even recall hearing about that. I'm gonna have to look into that. But I did appreciate the analogy about the dog and cat because it actually made sense to me the way he explained it. Okay, you have like a three-letter word, right? And you have to open it up and you have to, but you're not necessarily looking for C, A, or T. You got to look for like what's between it and what, hey, on the maternal side, paternal side, you're going to have, oh, we have a common A here. But then you have dog, which ultimately it's the same three-letter word, right? It has the same like kind of makeup, but no, between that. So you could have what appears to be the same thing, but it's not the same thing at all. It's completely different. Those are completely different words, but it's still a three-letter basic word. I don't know. It made sense to me when I was reading it, even in the
Mhm.
dysfunctional state that I'm in. I'm like, oh, okay, like that kind of made sense to me. So, um, I don't
And
think they're gonna plead at all.
no, I don't think so at this point. Um, and like when you were, I think Tess, yeah, I think so. But I remember, allegedly, I think one of the brothers killed the other, is what I've heard. And I would,
Oh,
they said that there's like a lot of like, this is speculation, of course, because the only person that has like come out and talked on like Brian's side of the family to media, remember, it was his former aunt by marriage. Like she was married to one of Michael Kohberger, Brian's dad, his brother. And so, yeah, nobody's heard from it. And I remember that I think they're all like a lot of them like live in the Vegas area, I think is what she
mm.
said. Because she was the one that said, like, oh, whenever he came over, we'd have to cook his stuff in
Oh,
different
yep,
stuff, remember?
different hands. Yep.
And I actually went and pulled, it took me a while to try to get back to like the original record of where all that came from, because there has been so much speculation. And I'm just like,
So,
who said it?
yep. And then because when, oh, why would he use a leather sheath, if he is so against animal, like, and then it was the whole, well, is it from choice, religious, medical? Why isn't he eating meat? That I remember that. And well, Harlot, there also has to be a plea offered, right?
Yeah. So that's interesting. I am curious at this point because of the evidence with the DNA, and now that this is moving forward, um, and that's I really do think that there's other circumstantial evidence, obviously, but that's like the strongest putting him in the house. Um, I don't know. I don't know if they really would offer one. If they did, they'd have to go back from it. I don't think that they need the families,
But they
like,
kind of do, you know.
but they could, yeah, I think that they would talk with the families. And you have four families who have different views and things, and that's normal. So it's just kind of interesting to me.
It is really interesting, and it would be so incredibly hard to not just get one family on board with something, but four.
Yeah. And and I'm wondering, like, when they asked, like, if they got that call, maybe they were a little freaked out about it because it sounds like they had their DNA uploaded, but it wasn't like maybe something wasn't available for them to like officially be able to look into.
Mm-hmm.
And that they had the lab asking them and bringing
Right.
in one of ISP. This is a very odd process. I'm not gonna lie, I can understand why the defense has a lot of questions, and I think this stuff needs to be buttoned up. Even though it's a tip, I'm just saying, like, going into the future, like, this just it gives me a little pause.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to go over Leah Larkins and then the response denying of the Franks. I'm really, I like this judge. I really like this judge.
Me too. Yeah, he's on it. But thank you for having me, and I
No,
hope you
thank
feel
you. And again,
better.
I'm sorry. I really am sorry, but thank you. And I'm so sorry you had so much reading. And again, I was like, oh, thank goodness. Like, she's got the majority of the reading right now. But you not only had a lot of reading, you had a lot of big words when you were doing the polymorphism. And I was sitting here in pain, but I was like, oh, poor Shay.
Oh, yeah.
Poor
No, that doesn't
Shay.
bother me.
It was a lot. It was a lot. And when you start to read that long, your tongue gets twisted, and like you can't even get the words out properly at some point. Thank you, Harlot. Thank you.
I
Yeah,
had
I
to
don't know,
write
guys.
a
It's
lot of
interesting.
papers with some of those words, so it wasn't
Yeah,
like so bad.
but it is interesting. It is interesting to get a better understanding. And again, all of the people who are so convinced he was set up, which again, I'm not saying, oh no, not a chance. I'm just saying I hope people are really willing to go through all of this and read it and don't just have your mind made up the way I don't have my mind made up that, oh, 100% he did it. No, but I really hope that people take the time to read it and understand it and listen versus being confirmation biased.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Thank you again, and I will talk with you soon, girl.
I love you. Yes, thank you. Rest your jaw.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Satya.
Bridget. Have a
Bye.
wonderful night, guys.
You
Thank you
too.
so much. Good night.